Alex here with Flower Street Urban Gardens. This is going to be our topic today. We're going to be talking about thinning our peach trees. So with that, let's talk about thinning out peach trees. Now, this peach tree is actually a Florida Prince, and the peaches are amazing. This tree, I want to give a shout out to a good friend of mine and a small business owner at RSI Growers over in Glendale. His name's Reed. You can do a search for RSI Grower or contact us and we'll get you the information for his phone number. It's a private place. You can go over there and get the trees. He makes all these trees. These are all grafted specifically for Arizona. A lot of the trees that we get here in Arizona, they're coming from different parts of the country. A lot of them are coming from California, and they're just not nearly as productive because they don't have the root stock that's really best for our climates here in Arizona. So check out Reed at RSI Growers. This tree was probably put in the ground about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. It was literally just a 5-gallon tree. They sell them in 5 gallons and 15 gallons. So this tree, I pruned it back quite a bit when it was dormant. In February is the best time to prune them. Now, what we're going to be talking about is thinning the peaches. This tree was absolutely beautiful and full of blooms just a few weeks ago, and now as you can see, the fruit is all set on the trees. And this is a critical time for us to get out in the garden. The weather's beautiful here in Arizona, but if you're in California, you're in Florida, it's going to be a very similar thing that you're going to be going through. The time is about the weather and temperature, and the tree production's very similar. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be thinning the tree. Now, when it sets all these blossoms and the bees come around and insects and hummingbirds pollinates everything, then those blooms will turn into the fruit. Now, there's going to be far more fruit than this tree is going to be able to support. Literally, it will have so much fruit on it. If you don't thin it, it can break the branches, and it can also, the small branches, which they typically call redwood, when it's starting to bloom, it'll have sort of a blush red color to it. Some of them will be a little bit more red. But that little branch was a branch that grew last year. And that's how these trees produce the fruit. So the branches that have the fruit on it was last year's growth. If you leave that on, it's not going to be as productive next year on that same branch. So that's what we want to look for when we're doing the pruning. But these small branches, on this cluster alone, there's 2, 4, 6 right here on the end of that. That's going to be way too much for this little branch to support, and even some of these large branches could break off. And then also, the way this works is the sun is collecting, the tree is collecting the energy from the sun through the leaves and photosynthesis. There's a massive amount of sap and energy that's coming from the soil through the leaves into the tree. So there's massive things happening to these trees right now to push out. If we don't thin it, what you're going to end up with is a lot of very small fruit with not a lot of flesh on it that's going to be mostly pit. So it's not really that great. It's not going to have the sugar content to it. It's not going to be that great to eat, but if you are planning on preserving any of this, it's much more difficult to work with the small peaches than it is the large peaches. So the rule of thumb is you want to thin it to about 6 to 8 inches apart. I commonly do about 6 inches apart on my trees, which my hands are a little large, so this is roughly 6 inches. You know, if your hands are a little bit smaller, you can spread those out. That's a little bit closer to 8 inches for my hand. So that's what I want to do, is just sort of look what's happening here on these branches. Now on this branch, I'm really only going to leave one of these on here, one of the 6. And you want to look at it, see which one you think is a little bit larger, and that's one that has taken off a little bit quicker. And it looks like this one over here in the back is. Now, when you pull these off, you want to pull it to the tip of the tree. If you pull it back, it could tear. This is more like a skin right now than a bark. It can tear that and it could damage that little branch and it could kill it. So just pull those off towards you. Now I've got one on this one. Now I've got some little tiny ones down here that I want to get rid of as well. And there's 2 on this one, so we're going to take this off. Now on this branch right here, you can see all the way up to the top, it's almost like grapes growing on it. So this is a good example. We're going to take these off here and just pull these down. And because the way that I prune these trees, okay, so I've got one here, got one here. Now got this one, but I really like the way that one's looking. So I'm gonna leave that one and take these off and start again. I like the way this one's looking, so we're gonna take these off. And I'm just holding the end of the branch just a little bit to give me a little bit more control of what's happening. Now I've got 4, 6 fruit that's gonna come on this branch, and those are all gonna be amazing peaches there. On this branch again, you can see how they're just sort of clustered on here. We're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna take this off, these, again right here, take those off, and the one on the end. Now that branch is gonna be able to support those peaches, and those peaches can grow to nearly the size of my fist, and they are amazing fruit. Now when you're selecting your trees for your property, or if you're doing in containers, what I suggest, and I learned this from my friend Reed, is don't go overboard with one variety. You want to have different varieties that are going to ripen at different times, so you're not overloaded with too many peaches that you can't eat or that you can't store. So let's look at this tree over here. This peach tree, as you look at it, you can see that this side here is all bloomed out. We still need to thin the peaches on this tree. But if you look at this section of the tree, it's starting to just come out of dormancy, and the blooms are being set as we speak. So this tree is a grafted tree as well, grafted to the rootstock, but there's 2 separate varieties of fruit tree here, which is another thing that you can do. If you're limited in your space, you can get a grafted tree from Reed that has 2 different varieties on it that will ripen at different times. And he's an amazing expert that will be able to give you the information that you need to make the choice to get what's going to be best for your for what it is that you need for you and your family and your community. Because if you are putting a community garden together, you want to think of these same kind of things, where we do have backyard orchards, but we're not producing and selling these in grocery stores for the most part. In the backyard, you want to think about these kind of things. So that's going to be it with the fruit trees and thinning out the peaches. Really important to do that now. And what you want to look for is that when the fruit's about the size of your thumb, that's a really good time to thin them. Because again, all this is being pumped into the tree, and you don't want to be pumping into too many. You want all that energy to be focused on a fewer. You're going to get much better fruit that way. So now, this is the time for you guys to really be planning your victory gardens. Now, this is, again, for if you have access to any kind of land or pot, anything at all, you need to start planning this. You can start planning with your seeds. You can start the timing as far as when you're going to start your starter plants in the house or in the garage, whatever you've got, so you are ready when the weather breaks and spring is in your area. You'll be able to get that stuff in the ground right away. you guys, all of us are going to need to be doing more and more of this to help support our local communities. And I want to thank all of you for sharing this. I know I was connected with a dear friend of mine in Florida yesterday who's been following me. Nick, I love you guys, miss you. Thanks again for sharing. And this is Alex with Flower Street Urban Gardens. We'll see you next time.